Welcome to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching Podcast, where we're all about helping healthcare professionals like you create positive change at work, at home, and everywhere in between. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching Podcast. And this month, in June, it's Pride Month. So we're going to talk a little bit about leading with pride and inclusion in healthcare. And so Klaus and I are going to chat a little bit about how to optimize that for you and your team. And so, Klaus, I'm curious, when you think through your leadership journey and all the different areas and arenas that you've been in healthcare, have you ever felt the weight of being both a healthcare professional and managing your identity in the healthcare setting? Was there ever any tension points?
Yeah, it's very interesting you asked that. When I think back to it, I've been practicing medicine now as a PA for about 7 years now. And I feel like the landscape of healthcare has changed even in those 7 years in terms of workplace culture and how it's okay to be your authentic self more so now than it ever has been. I think we're much more open. There's much more inclusivity. There are some changes obviously happening politically, but in general speaking, in healthcare, we are very much more involved and able to speak freely and be more of ourselves. When I think back, I do think there were some challenges in the essence of identifying as a gay man and just the way patients perceived you, even your leadership perceived you, and how that could play a role into promotions and pay and how you're treated in the workplace. So when I think back, that was in the back of my mind when I was getting into practice and working in a field that was very male dominated as well, especially in the adrenaline rush of the emergency room that men typically lean towards. That was something I always had to keep in the back of my mind and how to act in that manner. I grew up in a time where there were still people not very comfortable with sexuality that was beyond what they're comfortable with. And so being safe with that and comfortable with that and knowing that homophobia still exists and how to approach that and move on so that I can still kind of lead with my authentic self, but also provide the best patient care.
Yeah, it's funny how you don't really realize how much you are always a little bit wary when you go into a situation, whether it's a clinical encounter, whether it's a colleague, you just don't know where it might rear its ugly head in terms of where it might become an issue or not an issue. It's hard to know. I'm wondering, some of the unique challenges, what are they for LGBTQIA healthcare professionals that many of our listeners might not be able to initially recognize? And even myself as a well-meaning colleague might accidentally continue to reinforce a culture that's not welcoming. And I think that we also have to reconcile the fact that everyone doesn't necessarily always want to be seen by their quote unquote label. Like, I don't always want to be seen as a woman. I don't always want to be seen as an Asian person. You don't always want to be seen as a gay male. I mean, like, one part of our identity is only one small part of our identity. And it's always surprising when people see us as our whole self versus just one small piece. And so I'm just curious, are there things that you've heard from your colleagues that you've experienced that even well-meaning colleagues, we actually can hurt each other?
Yeah, I think you said it exactly right. And it's something I think we always have to be sensitive about, and not just with the identity of sexuality and gender, but it's also culture and unique differences of human beings, I would say. And what comes up for me is not assuming that it's okay to talk to somebody in a certain way or assume pronouns, for instance, these things that some people are very important. And so knowing when people are maybe getting turned off by the way you're talking to them, because the hard part, I think, in healthcare is we try and create families, we try and create communities. And though that is great, sometimes too much of our personal selves are unleashed among our teams that people get a little too comfortable with the way they say things, and that can come off inappropriately. And I think change the dynamics of the relationship and the way that work is handled. And so I think in terms of that, it's just, like I said, being sensitive to each person and not pushing the limits too far of that personal touch and remembering we're still in work. It's still a professional environment. Let's remember that before we kind of get too comfortable with just, okay, just because he's a gay male, that he likes to be called she or as a joke, or they know the lingo of the gay community and they want to be associated with that. You don't know. So I think that's just something to be aware of.
Yeah. It's never great to culturally appropriate other people's identities or cultures without an appreciation. And it's hard. It's one of those things where sometimes we just are just trying to want to be friends and fit in. And other times it really is coming from a place where, like, well, actually, my best friend is, and I go out with my best friend all the time. And it's actually, that's the reason why I'm trying to use the lingo, et cetera, and try to be more friendly than the normal. So it's always just an interesting perspective how we interact at work, try to be as sensitive as we can in all of our different perspectives, and yet recognize sometimes we might all accidentally offend each other. And I think the hardest thing is
Mhm.
having the courage to say that, like, hey, didn't love that. And I think what's also scary is, especially in healthcare, is people get pretty upset when we say, you're getting close to my boundary. I sort of need a little bit of space. And that could be a patient or a colleague on the team. I feel like sometimes it's not taken well when we're just trying to speak up for ourselves in terms of, do you feel a little weird about boundaries being
Mhm.
trespassed?
Yeah. Yeah. There's always a time and a place, I think. And I think you have to kind of read the room of when it's okay to be a little bit more personal, but also being, like you said, sensitive to who's listening. I have some gay colleagues as well. And some of the things that they like to be talked about and talked to is not the way I like to. And just being very sensitive to the way that happens. Because I think in healthcare, we're so used to just chatting along that we always forget that there are ears everywhere.
It's a really great lesson. There are ears everywhere, and everyone is role modeling off each other all the time. And I think you also hit a really important thing that just because you have one particular micro identity that you identify with, it's just only one small identity. Like, you meet one Asian person, it's just one Asian person. Like, you just meet one guy, it's just one guy. It doesn't really matter. So you have to really take each person as an individual, and that there should be, I mean, if anything, what we're talking about is, like, do we stereotype a little bit, like in healthcare? Like, whether no matter what tribe of medicine you're in, whether you're surgery or medicine or outpatient or inpatient, whether you're EMS, everyone stereotypes a little bit. And that goes along with the fact that, can we not just all just see people as whole humans in some ways? That's actually, I think, why I love Pride Month so much, because when I see the rainbow flags and I see the celebrations, it really is just like, come as you are, like, whatever. You want purple hair, it's all good. If you're willing to be out, it's good. There's many allies who are out. It's all okay. To me, it's more of a celebration of love than anything else.
Yeah. And I think what pride is a reminder for me too is eliminating judgment. I think stereotypes come with judgment. And just as you mentioned, you see EMS, you may just be judging them because they're EMS. Like, oh, they're not good enough to be nurses. Like, come on, that's ridiculous that some people would even have these thought processes. Eliminate it. They're a human being with multiple qualities that make them the best version of themselves, and we don't know anything about them, or you may, but you need to know. We can't judge based off your one experience with them or whatnot. So, and that's the thing about pride is that come as you are. You're loved for who you are. As long as you're spreading kindness, you're not trying to hurt people. I think that's what, at least for me, what pride's all about is just we are all human and we can all support each other in this kind of humanity that we're seeking.
Yes. Yeah. I'm wondering, how can healthcare leaders at every level help shift systems that are currently marginalizing LGBTQ voices from a clinical perspective or a structural perspective, both in the workforce and also in the clinical side?
Well, that's tough, I'll say. How to make everybody feel inclusive from every role, I think, is a tough one. But I will say that I think as long as you are just inclusive to human beings in general, you're fine. And I think it ends up coming down to individual leadership, just keeping it in mind that we all have judgments and to have to really hone in and revisit that. And remembering that if somebody's up for a promotion or if there seems to be some challenges or team dynamics that are not working out, just to go in and listen, hear the people out, because it might not just be the LGBTQ community. It could be a group of men or a group of women, whoever, whatever it may be, and see where it is that the assistance can be brought into. What opportunities, solutions can you offer based off what you're hearing is problematic? But normally, we just want to be seen as the other colleagues that are out there
Right.
or and not see us as anything different just because of that one identity.
Yeah. The reason I ask some of these questions is also because I feel like in many situations with women physicians or women in leadership, there's always this weird perception of microaggression or being mansplained or just, and so I wondered whether or not there's the same perception of marginalization that often occurs simply for being LGBTQ identifying. And so I really appreciate that perspective. At the end of the day, it's really just trying to be a good human first. And that will go a long way in terms of slowing down to be able to hear different perspectives. And so the marginalization comes when we're just rushing around doing status quo and just letting the system potentially be a really scary, untrustworthy place to even come. I mean, so I think the fact that people of the LGBTQ community actually even make it to your doorstep is pretty impressive already, because I think we all can share the fact that they're not trusting that it's gonna be a warm, welcoming experience, just like many Black individuals have experienced historically in our healthcare system. And so I think just that awareness and just trying to figure out how can I slow it down so I could listen. So I think that's a really great advice you're giving.
Yeah, I think also I find in healthcare, a lot of our minority populations, LGBTQ, and whether you identify as Asian, Black, European, whatever it may be, maybe international, a woman, are minority groups in healthcare. They've worked extra hard to be where they are. And there's so much strength, I think, in that. And I think we are very proud of what we have accomplished and where we are. And when challenges do arise, it's very important to stand your ground, don't give up, and professionally find ways to make you an equal. I know it's hard because that should be automatically given. Equality should be across the spectrum, no matter what. And so I think it's very important to remember that it's okay to fight for equality in a very professional manner.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think that's the reason why I always find it surprising when you evaluate pools of candidates for a position and you sit and convene and you talk about who ranks higher. And then the typical biases do come out for all of us. I mean, most people would say that all those implicit bias tests, well, we all have them. Even people of minority, we will also have the same biases towards that always shock us and surprise us in terms of where we're biased. And so just being aware that all of us see things with different sunglasses on a different day. And so can we imagine, is there another way of seeing things? Again, the slowing down to think, well, maybe actually the most qualified person in this room is the one that we think of as a minority or an immigrant or of a different identity from that's on the team. Because I think that sometimes we don't always in hiring think through like, oh, that'd be a great addition because that would be someone different that we've never had on our team before.
Exactly. And as a leader listening to this, just being open. And I think you just named it. I think there was a study, and I'll have to pull it up and share it in the description, but like that we have our own, like you mentioned, internal biases that we don't want to have and don't think we have, but we actually do. And just being able to sit with that, digest that, and say, I got to change that. That's the power. That's the awareness that's going to spark the change for you to be a better human, but at the same time, really light the spark in somebody else who's really showing up in their full authentic self that's doing great things.
Yeah, I'm really glad that some of the data and literature from the business world is finally translating into the healthcare world. As much as everyone hates the fact that healthcare is a business, I mean, business leaders know that greater diversity helps with business success because you actually have to have internally a wider internal test of product and test of the system before you launch into the market, which is going to be widely diverse. In healthcare, I think they're only finally realizing that people do want to get care from people they can identify with. And so if you don't make a pipeline that addresses that, then there are going to be continued issues with continued disparities simply because, again, you're not going to walk into a building that doesn't have anyone that you think you can trust. You're going to go out and seek and go do internet searches and drive maybe to another state to get more supportive care that's worth it. And now with telemedicine and increased accessibility, there are definitely many more options for patients out there than there ever have been in terms of private practice, direct cash pay practices, going to another state for care. You're going to lose business. So from a business sense in general, it makes complete sense to make sure that our diversity within our buildings represent the people that we're taking care of.
Yeah, there's power in diversity. Even if I think of myself as a patient, I love to see an office that is multicultural, diverse in the aspects of male, female, specialty, how they identify. I mean, though we are healthcare professionals there to help in diagnose, treat, whatnot, we also have a relatable factor. And I think that is also a very important thing is people find comfort when they can relate. So a lot of LGBTQ patients relate more to a provider that identifies as LGBTQ or an ally, opens up doors for them to really have conversation so that they can heal and get better. I think that's very important as well, is to always remember that there's, from a business perspective, it opens the doors to a greater population pool.
Yeah. So true. So true. I also am wondering if for our colleagues, what are ways that you've seen successful inclusion occur in the different teams that you've been working on, or different places that you've seen leaders do this intentionally, or colleagues of any level actually step up and did something that really you think made a difference for inclusion?
I think from what I've seen in my clients and seen in general is just awareness and recognition like that. We see this in hospital broad emails all the time now. Pride Month, we'd like to help celebrate by raising the flag, or here are a few events that we have going on, and we'd love to have you be part of it. So there's a lot more in the greater landscape of leadership in, I think, big hospital systems that they're doing. But I think in powerful leaders, I've also seen just reaching out and recognizing Happy Pride Month. There's no harm in it. They may not agree with among leadership of celebrations, but they can at least recognize you and say, "Oh, I hear you. I see you." I think goes a long way. I think from an LGBTQ individual, just hearing that I hear you, I see you, I recognize have your own challenges, and I want to help be part of solutions. And I see you as a human, and I'm here to celebrate that with you today. I think that goes a long way. And I don't think any of us, and I could be wrong, are looking for like a $20 raise or fireworks going off. I want to be recognized as a human day in and day out. And so I think it goes a long way just being aware.
Yeah, yeah. What advice would you give to cisgender or heterosexual colleagues who want to be better allies, but really aren't sure where to start and just sort of not say anything?
That's a very good question. And I think a lot of people come off like we talked about earlier in this episode with good intention, like using the lingo, because most people just know who most, if you've worked with certain employees for a long time, know how you identify pretty early on in your career. And so I think first off is asking them, are you in a relationship? Figure out who the relationship is. Like, don't assume, number one, that they may be gay or trans or lesbian or straight. Ask, because you never know, number one. And then I think will broaden the conversation more to say, oh, you're married to this person. Like, let's talk about that. I would like to learn more about them. And then from there, you get to see how they open up and how they interact. Are you talking from a friend's level, or are you talking from a professional level? Because if it's a professional level, stay professional. But if they're opening up and want to be more friends and or more open to that, there you go. I think you can use some more of that lingo that they may feel more comfortable with or use among their friends. And then at the same time, I think this goes with any relationship, like where you guys can go for drinks or go for a walk or connect, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been very impressed by the younger generations. So I guess sometimes I feel a little bit old, but watching inclusive physicians change their language and help me change my language towards, oh, who's your partner? Because then you don't, and then, oh, it's Abigail. Okay, awesome. Do you guys have kids? Do you have a dog? Everyone's just a normal person who likes to cook or travel or has family in the area. And so I think I learned that tip from my own trainees that, you have a partner and it could be married, not married. So I think the reality is then just trying to get to know them as them, like in terms of what things maybe, oh, you might want some tips on, like, oh, I really like these trails. I like to go biking, and just find commonality. So I think for me, what I've always tried to emphasize is that we're all much more similar, and I'm sure we can find something that we both like together. And
100%.
that's where allyship really is. That you sort of blend in, and it's not really a big deal. We just all hang out.
Yeah. And thank you as well for recognizing Pride Month, and at the same time that it all starts with a conversation. We're all human, being open and saying the way you are is not wrong. Who you may like or what you do and your lifestyle, as long as you are not harming anyone and you're living a life that's authentic to you, and who cares? Who are we to judge? And I think that is a daily reflective thing that I have to put into my mind, even as a human being, is remembering that. And Pride Month does just that for me.
Yeah. What message would you like to share with our listeners as we come to a close, especially those who feel unseen or underrepresented in their work environments, or really haven't come out, or just are sort of feel really awkward because they don't know themselves? Because a lot of times we're still discovering our own gender identity, because there are potentially some younger listeners listening to our podcast, like the next generation. Like, they're not going to do this. We're not going to come out during this block, this rotation. It's just not going to happen. And so what advice do you give for them in feeling unseen and not safe, for example, in their underrepresentation in certain work environments?
Yeah. And I'll say that the younger ones are not alone in this one as well. There are people who go throughout their entire lives, really,
True.
being the way that society has told them to be. And I will say that you're not alone in this career, especially in healthcare. There are many allies, but there are many people who identify as LGBTQ plus, and you may not know initially, but we are all here. And talk to somebody about it too. If you find that it's a challenge for you to grow as a human being, and especially to enter into this healthcare workforce, there are people to talk to about that, and there's support. And we, as coaches, love to help people, especially people in healthcare who are looking to take those next steps in their lives, because you deserve a career in healthcare. Healthcare, though challenging, is amazing. The ability to help somebody who is suffering or prevent suffering, I think, is a really beautiful thing that I think we forget to remind ourselves about. So, yeah, we're here. I'd love to talk.
Yeah. And I think that's always what amazes me, that even if you may not find the community like really local to you, keep looking, because those communities do exist. I mean, we actually have a pretty large LGBTQ medical education within our city. So there's just always things going on. So if you don't have it where you are, then the reality is it does exist somewhere. And so you are able to make those kind of connections and to find the people that you can connect with. So as we come to a close, I guess I'm wondering, now this is really the last question. How do you think your journey of integrating your authentic self into your professional life has actually made you a better healthcare provider and leader?
Oh, in so many ways. I learned how to strike the balance of, and I'm always authentic. Let's start with that. But I think how much of my personal self I shed into my work environment, both to my colleagues and my patients, all depends on the comfort that they have, number one. So if my colleagues are very comfortable with the way that I am as an LGBTQ, or multicultural or DIY, or my multiple identities, then I open up in that aspect. Same thing with my patients. I get many patients that identify as LGBTQ and can automatically pretty much tell by my mannerisms or whatnot. And I find that it creates a stronger relationship and allows them to open up more so that they can actually get the treatment that they deserve. So I think there's lots of pros with it now that I've learned to strike that balance, and I feel good. I walk proud every day.
That's the best way to end this episode. Because I think we all wish that we could walk proud every day. And I know that the reality is that doesn't always feel that way for a lot of people. And so if you can channel that, especially this month in Pride Month, then that's a huge win. So
100%.
thank you, everybody, for listening to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and feel free to please drop us a line. We will love to hear from you. Klaus will love to hear from you at podcast@transforminghealthcarecoaching.com. Tell us if you like this episode. Tell us what you want to hear more of. Tell us about a burning question you want us to address on this podcast. It's time to email us, and we'll drop that information below down the show notes on our YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lily. Happy Pride, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and share with a colleague who would benefit. Together, we can transform healthcare one person at a time. Find us anywhere you find your podcasts. Ready to take your healthcare leadership journey to the next level? Book a discovery call, free, at transforminghealthcarecoaching.com to explore our personalized coaching packages designed specifically for healthcare professionals like you.